Narinig mo na ba ang labanan sa Bataan at Corregidor? Mga alingaw-ngaw ng isang panahong ang bayan ay sinubok, ngunit hindi nawala ng pag-asang hanggang kamatayan. Sa panahon ngayon, maaaring hindi na at patuloy na nawawala. Tara, bumalik tayo sa nakaraan. The long-awaited promise of independence was almost within reach. But before the nation could awaken to liberty, it was shaken by yet another invasion. Hours after the attack on the U.S. naval base in Pearl Harbor, Japanese bombs rained down on Baguio, Davao, Clark, and Iba fields. It was the start of the invasion. In the midst of the chaos, General Douglas MacArthur took command. He organized first the United States Army Forces in the Far East, or USAFE. This is a group where Filipinos and Americans stand together, ready to defend every inch of their beloved land. Many of these volunteers were farmers, workers, or even young students who had never held a gun before, but they took up arms in order to fight the advancing Japanese Empire. As Japanese troops led by Masaharu Homa landed in Apari, Vigan, and finally Lingayen Gulf, they advanced swiftly towards Manila. Lumaban sila ng higit sa kanilang makakaya, but the enemy had greater numbers, superior weapons, and control of the air and sea. Realizing they could not stop the invasion on an open ground, MacArthur executed War Plan Orange, a strategy to withdraw all troops to the Bataan Peninsula in the island fortress of Corregidor. From there, their main goal was to delay the enemy until reinforcements come. By then, Manila was declared an open city to spare civilians from destruction, and civilians along with government officials including President Manuel L. Quezon, they were moved to Corregidor for safety and began one of the most heroic defenses in the Philippine history. As the Japanese advanced, the soldiers in Bataan built defenses across a Bukay-Mauban line until they were pushed back by the Japanese breakthrough to Orion-Bagak line, their last and final defense. They fought under the burning sun and pouring rain. Despite hunger, disease, and exhaustion, they never gave up. Heroes rose from the front lines like Sergeant Jose Calugas, who ran through enemy fire to occupy an abandoned cannon and turn it against them. His bravery earned him the U.S. Congressional Medal of Honor, the first for a Filipino in the war. For 3 long months, the defenders held the line. They fought in the Battle of the Points and the Battle of the Pockets, repelling wave after wave of attacks. The Japanese had expected victories in days. Nevertheless, the Filipinos made them fight for every inch until the Japanese had to pull back and await reinforcements.
Ragtag USAFE units defending their rear positions ferociously. The Japanese attackers were annihilated.
By March 1942, the situation had become unbearable. The men suffered from diseases like malaria and were starving to death. Many had resorted to eating iguanas, snakes, wild plants, and to the point that available foods were only horses.
We were eating snakes, and we started to eat horses. Lugaw, later on, sangkamote with lugaw, and later on, kangkong with lugaw.
Still, they fought, believing that America's help was on the way. But the harsh truth, they were made sacrificial pawns. Frustrated by the America's silence and no action, President Quezon pleaded for the Philippines to be granted immediate independence, giving him the power to order Americans and Japanese out of the country and hoping neutrality might save lives. But the America refused. The United States had decided to focus on the war in Europe over them who are in Pacific. Soon after, MacArthur was ordered to leave to command forces in Australia.
I shall return.
Those words became the flicker of hope for every soldier left behind in Bataan in Corregidor. But on April 3, 1942, strangely opposing to Good Friday, the Japanese reinforcements had finally arrived from when they held back. In doing so, they launched their final assault to the Bataan line. The skies over Mount Samat in Bataan turned black with smoke and fire, and eventually, the front lines collapsed in the face of relentless assault. General Edward King, who was assigned by MacArthur to take over, he made the painful decision to surrender. He did not surrender in defeat, but mercy for the lives of his fellow men. And that day, Bataan had fallen to the enemy's hands. Over 66,000 Filipino and American soldiers were forced to march more than 100 kilometers. Under scorching sun, from Maribeles to San Fernando, they would meet and board the train to Capas Tarlac for a final walk to the O'Donnell prison camp, where they would have been held as captives, but death came along the way.
お前らは何にもしなくていい。じっとしてるだけだ。
They were denied food and water.
Some who fell out of line or delayed the march were simply bayoneted by their Japanese captors.
Countless lives were lost in this dark ordeal. Inside the cramped trains, some died standing, unable to move or breathe. Yet, amid the cruelty, compassion still lived. Filipino civilians risked their lives to hand food and water and help some prisoners to escape. Unfortunately, to those who died, they failed to escape. Although the Bataan had fallen, across the bay, the island of Corregidor, known as the Rock, still stood. It was the final stronghold of freedom and hope in the Philippines. On it, there are tunnels built where soldiers, nurses, civilians use them as headquarters, hospital, and finally, refuge. For weeks, they endured constant bombing from Japanese planes and artillery, yet no one surrendered until May 5, 1942. The Japanese advanced further as reinforcements continued to arrive. The defenders, hungry and wounded, resisted to their last bullet. By May 6, General Jonathan Wainwright, who was taking command, was forced to surrender too. Corregidor had also fallen.
After 5 months of intense bombardments and 2 days of hand-to-hand combat, the defeat was imminent, and the battle on the Rock came to an end.
They too followed the fates of Bataan prisoners, the death march to O'Donnell camp. Now, the Philippines became under complete Japanese occupation. Ulitin ko, naaalala mo na ba?